So it's been zombies, Bigfoot, Jesus, and now aliens on the ever-growing list of cryptids that I've never been particularly interested in, but here I am reading books and making videos on them. I have no excuse or explanation, but if you have a cryptid you'd want me to read about, and tell me about it in the comments below. In the meantime, on with this video. Let's talk about When the Skies Fell on Splendor by Emily Henry. Wrong side of the book. When the Skies Fell on Splendor follows Franny and her 5 friends, Remy, Sophia, Nick, Levi, and her brother Arthur, after they've had an alien encounter that turns their lives upside down. The book starts with those darn kids and their dog, too, heading out to the local abandoned house to film a mockumentary on ghosts. And the beginning chapter feels kind of shaky. It's hard to do introductions of a lot of characters right away. Normally you really don't want to introduce more than 2 or 3 characters right away because it can be overwhelming for readers. But this book doesn't waste any time building up to the alien encounter, so we get a bit of a crash course through the main group. And that's a little shaky, getting the characters' names and a quick intro to who they are to Franny, who's the narrator, and a little about them. And not all the personality traits that are originally used to introduce these characters hold up through the rest of the story. But the characters get better and more lovable the more we get to know them. And having the alien encounter happen really fast helps you get invested in the story.
Aliens!
So the alien encounter starts with the group seeing a shooting star land nearby and going to investigate it. They find it in the middle of a power plant and discover it's a flowing sort of jelly or plate thing. I don't know, aliens. And naturally, one of them decides to touch it, which ends up breaking the aliens out and making the 6 humans lose several hours as the aliens sort of possess their bodies. They come to the next morning with the alien vessel gone, but they can't worry about that because these are teenagers, so they need to hurry home because the cops have been called and they need to check in with their parents. And once they are home and have a moment to breathe, they notice that things are off. Most obviously being burn marks on all of them that match burn marks at the ground of the power plant, which is bad news because it wasn't their parents who called the cops, but the plant owners who were reporting vandalism. And now all signs point to the group being the vandals.
Vandals?
Vandals?
So they know they can't tell anyone what's going on, even though the more weird things start popping up, like Levi sleepwalking or Franny giving off static shocks every time she touches metal or electronics. The next morning is also when they get solid proof that this was an alien that's messing with them, because naturally they're teenagers. This book takes place in the 2010s. They had their cameras out recording their break-in. And those cameras also recorded the alien messing with them while they were spacing out. And also, naturally, they decided to post the video online, which is a stupid decision, but also teenagers. And right away, their video blows up, and one of the comments is from a fellow UFO enthusiast who calls himself Black Mailbox Bill, who tells them to take the video down and get in contact with him before the government can snatch them up. And that's all set up for later.
We're just getting started.
Overall, the main plot for this section is a lot of slow speculation, but it's interwoven with Franny thinking about the other time something horrible happened when the local iron mill had an accident that killed a lot of people, crippled the town, and severely injured her other brother, Mark, which ripped apart her family as well as the lives and families of all her friends. That's a big thread connecting them all, the trauma from the accident. And that's something the book does masterfully. I love the breaks in the main plot where Franny remembers the past. The book does a great job of feeding us information at the right pace to leave us guessing, but keeping us from getting frustrated. In these chapters, they really show off how shaky the original characterizations were, because the group breaks up a lot more, giving us the opportunity to get to know each character and their relationship to Franny better, and understand why she loves them. We also get to see them get strange powers that they have to acknowledge and see how they react to them, but I'll get more into that later. And as the kids' powers manifest, they run around more and more trying to figure out what's happening to them and why and how to make it stop. And this leads them back to the rundown house where they originally saw the shooting star. They actually go back to the house several times. The first time there's just a handful of them since Nick's decided he's done. He does that like twice and keeps coming back. And Remy's grounded. Anyway, they go looking for debris that went missing to try and find their alien.
Aliens!
With only Remy and Franny knowing that the alien actually went into Franny. And while they're there, they get noticed by the police, who are still actively investigating the vandalism across the road. So Franny ends up having to run into the woods and discovers a cave full of magnetized debris. And this is also where Sophia finds her and where we get hints that everyone's keeping secrets. Again, stupid decisions, but it's what's driving the plot along.
Life goes on!
Another bad decision that plays into the plot is Franny now talking to Black Mailbox Bill, you know, the internet stranger who wants to meet her. Luckily, in all the chaos, Franny doesn't have time to properly correspond with him, but she also decides not to tell anyone besides Remy that she's talking to an internet stranger. Luckily, the next day, things calm down somewhat. The police investigation is called off, Remy gets ungrounded, and naturally the six of them decide to go back to the crime scene again. I swear, reading these bad decisions isn't as painful as I'm making it sound. The author did a great job of putting us in Franny's head and making everything they do make sense and seem like their only real option. Anyway, back at the abandoned house again, the kids all fully have to acknowledge their powers. For Franny, it's electricity manipulation. She realizes that she's not just electrically charged, but can actively control electronics. And she discovers this when Arthur, he's her brother, he's a jerk, locks her in a basement. Once they're out of the basement, Franny leads them upstairs where they discover Nick is now a piano prodigy. Remy can see the future. And it's there where he explains that he saw the end of the world, and the kids have to argue over whether or not it's because of the alien wanting to save or end the world. The end is here! They come to a consensus later when they're all having a sleepover and Levi and Sophia's powers come into play. Levi's powers are sleepwalking, which takes him to the house of the hermit who lives behind Franny and Arthur. And because of that, we learn more about the mill accident and how a lot of people think the hermit, Wayne, sabotaged a crane that was set to do maintenance in the mill, which caused a vat of molten iron to tip over and explode. And now the kids are convinced the alien wants them to save the world from whatever Wayne is up to. And we also learn that the secret Sophia has been keeping has been that she can see through the eyes of everyone who got zapped by the aliens. This leads to another nasty fight amongst them all, but honestly, these fights were so fun to read. These are fun characters in an incredibly stressful situation. It's fun. These are the chapters where all the tension really boils over. The kids are convinced Wayne is dangerous, so they go to the police for help, finally. But they're told without proof there's really nothing the police can do. And that leads them to breaking into Wayne's cellar to snoop around and try to find however he's going to destroy the world. And they don't find his world-ending laser gun, but they do find pictures of Franny and Arthur's family, and when they inevitably end up running into the woods again from adults, they discover a second crash site, which the kids conclude must mean there's another evil alien. Up until this point, Arthur was the one really pushing for the alien theory, but after everything they've seen and done, the last of the holdouts have to agree that it's all alien nonsense, messing with them. But before the kids can go back to Wayne's house or the police, even more drama starts. For starters, they notice that their burn marks are shrinking, which is a good sign, but they're not shrinking fast enough because the FBI has arrived, and Franny keeps getting more and more unhinged emails from Black Mailbox Bill, who reveals that he knows who she is. Luckily, Franny finally makes a good decision of telling her friends about Black Mailbox Bill. That leads to a massive blow-up between them, but they walk away stronger for the most part.
Hey, to warn you of a dangerous new internet trend.
Before they can try and come up with another plan, the FBI starts investigating them because, internet video they put up of aliens. And while Franny's running from the FBI, she ends up back at the mill and getting confronted by Black Mailbox Bill. And he is everything you'd expect from a strange internet man emailing little girls. He gives Franny some good information on their alien and tells her that stuff like this has happened before, and then he tries to kill her to get the alien. Luckily, Sophia's powers let her see everything, so she comes and rescues Franny, and this time the police actually help, somewhat. They arrest Black Mailbox Bill, but they also more or less hand the kids over to the FBI. And I should mention that Remy's dad is the police chief, so Remy's already in custody. His dad handed him right over. Luckily, before the rest of the kids can reach the compound where the FBI has set up, the dog reveals her powers by leading a stampede of cows down the road, stopping the cars and giving Franny, Sophia, and Levi, who's the police chief's nephew, the chance to escape from there, and they go back to the cave they originally found the magnetized metal in and meet up with Nick and Arthur, where they're able to regroup and make a plan on how to break Remy out. They decide they need a diversion, so they decide to hook up 1,000,000 electronics and fake a power surge and power outage to mimic Franny's powers. And it works! The FBI heads in one direction while the kids head in the other and manage to sneak into the compound. And they get pretty far using up the last of Sophia and Franny's powers to get close to Remy, only to realize the dog's 10 steps ahead of them and broke Remy out, and now they're in his room staring at soldiers. Luckily and unluckily, it's right at that moment that a tornado starts and destroys the tent compound the FBI set up, giving the kids just enough time to get away. You'd think getting away from Black Mailbox Bill and the FBI and losing their powers could be all the drama, but no, because now there's a tornado, and it's not the kids' biggest problem. And look, I live right on the edge of Tornado Valley. I don't worry about them, but I am scared of them, and I feel like if I were ever near one, it would get all my attention. But not for the kids. They decide now that they're all together, they need to go to Wayne's house again, because they still believe he's going to cause the end of the world, which they're wrong about. They get to Wayne's house and discover they've been wrong about everything. First of all, they were wrong about the aliens, who were not aliens, but souls or something of their deceased loved ones. They got zapped and possessed with the life force of Molly, Wayne's daughter, and Wayne got possessed by Mark, and it was Mark's spirit who possessed him to draw Franny and Arthur and their family, and also build a giant, can't pronounce that,
Fibonacci.
And for those of you who don't know, that's the shape of the universe. It's the swirl of a crab shell and the actual shape of the Milky Way galaxy. It's a mathematical formula that explains all natural properties. I probably butchered that explanation, but the point is Wayne has a giant crab shell made of sturdy metal on the second floor of his house where the big confrontation happened, and all the answers were revealed. And honestly, as the confrontation was happening, it felt unrealistic because there was still a tornado outside. And I was right. They spent too much time talking on top of a house because the tornado arrives tearing the roof off, and they all have to climb into the spiral to keep from being killed. And it does work. In the same way that Molly was able to show Remy glimpses of the future, Mark was able to do the same for Wayne. And that's why he was possessed to build what would be a protective structure from the tornado. And once the tornado passes, so too does a lot of the trouble. All the kids' powers are gone, and Wayne takes the blame for all the alien nonsense going on, and is the one carted off by the FBI. And after that, things calm down. Franny, who's just been hurt 10 ways to Sunday over the last few days, is taken to the hospital where she, her father, and Arthur all visit Mark, who's in a persistent vegetative state. But now they know at least a small part of him is floating freely from that state, and the last chapter takes place an undisclosed amount of time later with the kids driving off just like they started the book doing, with everything being different and yet the same.
Nothing ever changes.
Overall, When the Sky Fell on Splendor was a really fun and intense book. Emily Henry does a great job with descriptions. I'm the type of person who really visualizes what I'm reading, but that was hard to do in a lot of places in this book, and it felt overwhelming, but in a good way. It was hard for me to get a visual when Franny was describing things as she was panicking, and that set me on edge right alongside Franny. We feel Franny's emotions and pain, and we get little bits and details about Franny's friends describing both their personalities and appearances that makes the characters slowly come to life. This is a slow burn book that honestly feels frantic in the best way. There are so many questions, so many loose threads, so many characters, but the actual plot never felt overwhelming. It felt like I had a good grasp on what was happening, who was doing what, and what their goals were the entire time. Honestly, if you feel like you're struggling with too many threads or characters or just too much in your book, this book is a great example on how to juggle a lot and keep it from being confusing. It's overwhelming, yes, but not confusing, and that's what's fun about it. So go out and read When the Sky Fell on Splendor by Emily Henry.